Welcome back. So I have finally completed the Battle Brothers campaign. I completed all the legendary difficulties, all the hardest battles, explored the whole map, explored every city, kind of did everything that I wanted to do to complete the objective. And what I found is by the time of completing everything here, there were certainly a lot of mistakes that I ended up making on this game. And I think this game has a lot of things that are not clear, and I think it turns a lot of people off of this game because the way I did it, I definitely felt quite fatigued by the end of this playthrough, especially because of the bad decisions I made. It made it so my end team was really not good enough to really complete the end game things, and I think most video game enthusiasts are used to like getting an attachment of their units, not wanting them to die, wanting to just continue to progress, because you can really early on in the game it's quite forgiving. Well, I wouldn't quite, maybe that's a little too optimistic. You can definitely get your get rocked pretty hard in the beginning of the game, especially with the RNG, but overall you feel like you're on equal footing, I would say, against the opponent. And as you continue to get more and more guys, you start to actually feel like a powerhouse, and you start to really feel good. And then come the middle of the game, I think it really kind of rocks you hard because all of a sudden you start fighting guys that are now outnumbering you pretty regularly. They have better equipment than you. So if you haven't been sitting there like daggering down enemy leaders to get really good equipment, you can definitely get harmed and feel like you're way behind the 8 ball, especially if you end up getting into some of the in-game crises like the nobles. Then all of a sudden you're going to be fighting, 20 noble soldiers that are kitted out in medium to high tier armor, and they may actually have better gear than you do. And then they're also stronger than you. They have a bunch of shields, and then all of a sudden you feel like you're in this non-win situation, and you just have to ignore the end-game content and just run around the map. And then you're like not even doing the crises, so then you just feel like you're kind of at a loss. And I think that turns a lot of people off to this game, because when I've been looking online now that I've completing it, I see that there's a lot of reviews where people are just very, very frustrated. And I see that there's lots of guides and stuff out there. I watched a few of them. Some of them are from several years ago because obviously this is an older game. So going through after having all the DLC and things like that, I thought I'd just kind of give my 2 cents in here, see if maybe it's beneficial for other people that, may be inspired to give this game a look after all these years, because you can certainly get it for a good price now that it's older and you get it on sale. You get all the DLC, everything else, and you get it for probably 30-40 bucks, which is not a lot because I've now spent I think 130 hours or something into this game and completed it. And I definitely wouldn't recommend playing it the way I did, trying to do everything on one playthrough, because like I said, it gets to be very monotonous. This is a game where you're really meant to just kind of go through the events, get to your end game crisis, maybe do 2 of them, but then you really should be retiring, and then it encourages you to start over. Because what you do is when you do these new campaigns, I definitely do recommend doing the rebuilding a company, because it is a tutorial and it gives you a little bit of a story, and you get some starting brothers and things, and you can kind of go through and do it that way. Because really it's the early to medium middle part of the game, I keep saying medium for some reason, middle part of the game that I think is actually most enjoyable. Once you start getting into like days 200, 300, I really kind of got bored. The battles are massive. You're fighting guys that are 20, 30, 40 units on screen, and it just takes so long, and it's very tedious, and you're doing the same thing over and over again. It just got very frustrating. So I think the way I got over it is I just actually took it off camera here, and then I just put the cheat engine on, and I just sped it up to 5 times the game speed so I could get through those battles and just grind through a little bit. I personally hate grinding on games. I feel like I'm kind of wasting my time. I don't feel like I'm really progressing a whole lot. And I think that sometimes happens to a lot of people on this game too, because there's really not a lot of structure. So it really is just kind of go in and do whatever the hell you want, which is fun. But I think people are used to having a little more structure, and then if they're trying to do like a completionist thing like what I did, like I said, I think they just get very turned off by it. So I think if you do it that way, and then you just, each time you're starting a new company, you can do a different one of these starting situations here. I think that'll keep it feeling a little more novel and a little less redundant, and I think it'll just be a way better way of playing this, and you can kind of see some of these different situations here. And like I said, I think that'll be a huge boon for you. So that would be my first recommendation if you're really kind of turned off with these long drawn out things and you don't want to grind, because like I said, I hate grinding, and so I definitely was getting fatigued on this game with the way I did it, and that was because I had shitty guys, to be quite frank, because I didn't understand how everything was going to work. And so again, as I continue to go through this, hopefully I will make you have a much better experience with this game than I did, because I think it has a lot to offer, and I think it could be a great game. Like I said, I was just quite fatigued by the end of it. So, you know, just start out with the tutorial, you start, and then you can decide which one of these you want to do. I like a little bit of randomness here, so that's what I would recommend, but you can do whatever one you want. Don't feel compelled for these, and if you do end up wanting to just play for a really long time, it'll just cycle through each one of these. So I think I had the Nobles, and then it did the Holy War, and then the Greenskin, and then the Undead. I don't know if it would do like multiple things like Nobles, 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 and then this, or it'll just randomly go through, and then once it's gone through all four, it'll go down. It does have this permanent destruction. I would not recommend that, because what happens is different brigands and everybody else can just get in there and destroy the territories, and then you end up losing perks for places. And if you don't have that on, it'll still get destroyed, but then it can get rebuilt by the town. And so if you just have a permanent destruction, you can really lose out on a lot of stuff, which can be disheartening. Now if you're just doing the shorter campaigns, then by all means you might find that that actually is a fun thing for you. But what I also found is the AI will send out its militia to do something stupid, but then if there's another brigand area there, they'll burn down the town, or if you want to try to reload, the guys will move past you and then start burning down the town, or you're working in your inventory, you don't see that, and they sneak around you, or you're sitting there camping, waiting for the next brigand attack to come, because one of the objectives is to protect the town from like an undead invasion, or orcs, or brigands, something like that, and it's in a bunch of trees. And then all of a sudden you're sitting there just waiting, and the hunter's cabin, which is far away, just all of a sudden gets attacked off camera, and you can't even see them because they're hiding in the forest, and they burn down the territory. And you're just like, well, fuck, I just wasted a bunch of time waiting for these guys. I didn't see them because I was sitting there working in my inventory or camping, and you didn't have enough time to run over there. And you not only end up failing your mission and get less payments, but then you lost the territory. So again, if you're looking for a shorter campaign, you want to be hardcore, then by all means. But I would definitely recommend, at least for your first campaign, to keep that deactivated here. And so then just kind of going into the next area, now you get to make some decisions about what to do for your things. I would not recommend playing this game on Iron Man mode unless you're familiar with it, because you can get yourself into endgame battles quite early if you don't know what's going on, and you'll just wipe your whole squad. And now if you're like, hey, tough shit, that's real life and that's what happens, fine. For me, I don't find that fun, especially when you start fighting new enemies and you're not familiar with what the mechanics are. You can just get yourself absolutely wrecked. So again, if you want to play hard Iron Man mode, I think this would be a game that would be very brutal for it, and it could be quite the challenge, but I would not recommend it for your first playthrough for sure. Then you get into kind of having to decide what to do here. I did it on Expert, and again, if you're going to do a short campaign, that's fine, but when I wanted to beat all the endgame stuff, what ended up happening is on Expert, you let your contracts pay less, the deserters will take their equipment. I never had anybody actually desert on me, but the less money for the contracts was huge, because it just meant that I had to grind and grind and grind to get get a lot of money. Because what you need to do on this game is you want guys to die, you want to just randomly roll and hire new guys and hopefully get new brothers that are going to have better stats, and the guys that don't have good stats, you want them to just die and not worry about it, or you can retire them once they get some injuries, because then you can get some good retinue guys. But if you end up playing on the Expert like I was, I just never felt like I had enough money where I could just go and spend it hiring a lot of new characters. So I just felt like I was in this perpetual situation where it's like, all right, go do a contract, then I get to have to repair my equipment because my Battle Brothers aren't that good, so then their equipment's getting damaged, so then I got to buy a bunch of supplies. But then I was at it with my map spawn, it didn't have big cities where I was working, so then I just never really had enough supplies, so then I had to buy them for like over double what the price was. And so I just felt like I was on this perpetual rat race where I just didn't seem to progress as fast as possible, and it really dragged the game out. So unless you really want to do a grinding thing, or you're going to not try to do all the end-game content like I would actually probably recommend that you do it on a beginner, or maybe even in the veteran if you feel like that's too easy. I don't know how much the bonus pay would be, but especially if you want to do a longer campaign and do all the things, you're going to want to buy famed items, and they cost $30,000-$40,000 gold pieces, I guess I should say. And for most of the game, I rarely found that I was getting above 20,000-30,000. So then you'd find these famed items, then you wouldn't have the money to pay for it, and so I was just very disheartened with that. So keep that in mind. Like I said, this just added a lot of grinding in, and probably added 30% of the time onto my campaign, where I think I would have had a way better time having a little surplus of funds, just continually rolling to get new brothers. I would have had better endgame guys, and the endgame would have been way easier for me had I not felt so invested and pigeonholed into keeping my starting guys, because they were really kind of low to medium tier. Only a couple of them by the end of the game were actually pretty good, and I definitely felt it when I was fighting, you know, the Black Monolith or the Sunken Library, the Kraken, things like that. I definitely felt, and then even doing just, because the next thing you want to do is you want to clear out some strongholds. I'll get into that in a little bit. But by the end, when you're fighting 20-30 guys, you know, barbarians, goblins, orcs, things like that, it's very difficult, especially if you have low tier guys, because if you don't have guys that have good stats, then you're not going to be able to do that. Now all of a sudden you're going to be like, great, now I can't do this whole area of content because I don't have good enough brothers. And so it just kind of takes away the fun. Where this game is really enjoyable, though, is the combat. I think that was probably the best thing about this game. So I certainly would recommend expert difficulty if you're looking for a challenge, because this game is brutal in the combat. But again, if you're able to have enough funds where you're able to just buy new brothers, keep trying new things out, that I think that would make this a lot more enjoyable experience. And then I think you'd be okay as a player having a brutal combat experience, as long as you were able to continue to like roll and get new guys. Like, oh, whatever, this guy's trash, he gets himself killed, I don't care, and he gets himself killed, whatever, it just happens. But if you don't have the funds, then you don't really feel like you're able to do that, and so then you're sitting there pulling your hair out. There would be battles where I'd do the same battle like 3-4 times before I'd be able to do it without suffering any casualties and stuff like that. And then you're like, oh god, I just had this one bad roll, and now I have to restart the whole battle, and that's not fun, where you feel like you're kind of pigeonholed. You want to be able to just go with the flow and enjoy it. I mean, if you want to have a big challenge, that's great, but I personally don't like save scumming. It just kind of makes me feel kind of dirty, and like, I just don't have the skills here, and this sucks. And so I think that kind of messes with your mind. So keep that in mind. So that would be my main thing. And then with the starting funds, you have to decide, what do you want? How quickly do you want the game to get going? Because if you have low starting funds, which is what I did, you have to grind a little bit before you can start getting a bunch of guys going. Whereas if you've done the high funds, then you can kind of jump in, get some gear, get a bunch of brothers, and you can just hit the ground running. I personally would recommend that you, at least if you want a challenge, I'd recommend starting at low, because then you can kind of have a brutal start. If you're like, dude, I don't want to have to grind a little bit at the beginning, I want to just play around, know what to do, then you can certainly do high starting funds. But if you want a challenge, I certainly don't think doing the low starting funds is gonna make or break you. It's just how much of a trouble do you want to have for like the first 10 battles, and how quickly do you want to get going. But certainly the economic difficulty, I felt, really kind of ruined some of my enjoyment on the game here. So that would be my tips here. Or if you want to try it with expert and low, and do a short campaign and then retire, and then once you've kind of had that experience, then do the next campaign and kind of play around with the different settings, that would certainly be good. But like I said, when I was trying to complete everything with just one playthrough, it just did not make a good experience for me. So what else do I have to say here? One of the things that I would recommend, though, is again, going back to the money, because this game is all about money. When it comes down to it, it's money, get it so you can get better equipment, you can get better Battle Brothers, and you can just go crazy. You want to do a lot of missions to get for the money. I thought maybe late game that, oh, maybe I want to go out into the wild, clear out strongholds, be able to sell a bunch of equipment, and that would be the best way to make the money. I actually think the best way to make the money is by doing 2 and 3 skull missions, especially if they're like quick, like, oh, just go over to this other town and stop an ambush, because by the end of this game, I was doing like 3 skull invasions and where the undead would be attacking me, and it would be 3-4 invasions, so you just do 3 or 4 battles back to back, you get all that equipment, you'd be right outside of town, so you could then quickly empty your inventory, sell those items, and you go back and go to the noble that hired you, and he'd pay you 6,000-7,000 gold pieces. So if you do a couple of those missions back to back to back, you can quickly get enough where, and that's how I was able to start acquiring more famed equipment. Now all of a sudden it was becoming the situation where I'd do some missions, I'd clear out the missions, and then if I ended up getting the deliver cargo missions, then whichever place would you finally deliver the cargo to, they become well supplied. So you'd want to select locations that had an armorer, a weaponsmith, a fletcher, because what would happen is when that would happen, it wasn't always guaranteed, but it had a super high probability that you would go to those areas and then they have a famed weapon. And so if you found a place that had 3 or 4 of those different locations, then all of a sudden you could get a bunch of famed weapons. So obviously the armorer would sell armor, the weaponsmith would sell only melee weapons, but then one of the few times when you find a fletcher, because the fletcher would like almost, I never saw a fletcher have a famed weapon unless I did the mission where I dropped this trading caravan to them, and then you would get famed bows or famed crossbows, and that was huge because I found it was quite difficult to find famed ranged weapons out in the wild, unless you were looking for goblin stuff, in which case there was a plethora of it. But originally I thought, oh, these famed weapons with the goblin bows, that would be this huge boon, but actually I think a regular war bow is better. But the goblin bows are definitely good for starting out your brothers, especially if they have low tier stuff, because a lot of the goblin bows have increased chance to hit, so they could get some kills that can help you level them up a little bit quicker. But really I wanted to fight the nomads because they had the desert bows, which were like the equivalent of war bows that were famed. And then occasionally I just randomly killed a couple guys that had a, famed crossbow. I didn't really like the crossbows myself, but, maybe on further playthroughs, if I had better guys, I would find that better, more useful, I should say. But that's kind of my thoughts. And then the other thing I'd recommend is when you're selling equipment, you just carry like a shield or something that's worth like 100 gold pieces, because a fully repaired basic shield is worth 100. And if you have that place that's selling you for like 15 gold pieces or higher, that's a good price. A lot of the small towns will just habitually really give you low, so it'd be like they pay you 10 gold pieces, and so that's like 10% of what it's worth. Whereas if you go to the big cities, they're like almost always going to pay you at least 15% of what the item's worth, and frequently I was finding like 18-19%. And over the span of the game, that's huge, because in addition to you being able to get better prices when you're selling the equipment, they always have more healing supplies, more food, and just repair supplies as well, and arrows. Now the price was usually decent. Sometimes you'd be out in the smaller areas and they give you like better food and better prices, but for the most part they'd only sell 1 or 2 supplies, which would be 20 supplies each. So because I was wasting so much time early on, I was not only losing a lot of money by selling at suboptimal prices, but then I was never repairing gear, because I just never I always felt like I was behind the 8 ball with the supplies. So if I would just have been going to the strongholds more regularly, then I would have been able to bypass that, and I would have been able to stockpile a lot more gold. Because what I was finding is when I was going off camera and I started doing that regularly, especially with the tier 2, tier 3 weapons, I was just stacking up gold really quickly. The other thing that I did wrong on this game that I would strongly recommend that you not do is I'm a hoarder when it comes to these games. Like, I'm like, oh, I never know
no kind of situation, because I was going in blind. So I'm like, oh, is there going to be a situation where I need to have, you know, this item here, where is if I don't have it, then I'm going to be in trouble because I don't have enough money and I'm not going to be able to buy these things. So I'm just going to fill up my inventory and we'll just figure it out. And I'll just keep going back to stores and things like that. And it just added a lot of time. I lost out on a lot of funds, and it was just a lot of wasted space. So do not do that in this game. I mean, it's fine if you want to have a couple different weapon variants, because especially towards the end game, you need to have different weapon variants. Different weapons are going to be good for different situations. But if you, like, I would regularly fill up my inventory, because once you upgrade the cart to the max, you have like 180 spots or something like that. And I would have it filled up like 140 spots. So I'd have 40 inventory spaces for equipment. You're like, oh, that sounds like a lot. But when you're killing 43 guys in a match, then all of a sudden you're leaving behind most of the equipment. And so again, you're just wasting money at that point in time. So you need to keep your cart open. Now, there are mods out there that would allow you to increase your cart. And there's also mods that would increase the game speed. If you're into modding games, those would be things that I would definitely recommend, because that was definitely one of the things that also annoyed me to no end, was the lack of inventory space in this game, because it wants you to be like, hey, you want to get some cool equipment? Hey, you want to get some famed items? You're going to want to hold on to these. You don't want to get rid of them. And then what I don't know is if you sell the famed items, will the AI then start showing you those same items again, or once you've gotten it and you've sold it, will those just be removed from the party indefinitely, or the game indefinitely? I'm not sure how that works. So I was always scared to give away the famed items, because I, you know, to struggle to get them, and I didn't want to keep getting the same ones over and over and over again, because I wanted to get some cool shit, you know. But definitely don't do that. Like, I had goblin poisons, because I thought, oh, I'm gonna save these poisons for really hard battles, and then I could just give all these poisons to all my guys. So, you know, that was like 15 spots that I just wasted for most of the game. And then by the time I got to a point where I actually wanted to use the poisons, I realized you only had the poison for 4 attacks, and then some guys are immune to the poison, and it didn't really do enough damage that was really worth it. So I'm like, shit, I wasted all this time and inventory space on these items that I never should have had. So don't do that. What I would recommend is, I thought, oh, I just want to kind of keep all these crafting items and things like that too, in case I want to make things. And I thought maybe if I just kind of went through there, I could see the different combinations and just, you know, unlock the spells and things like that. Not a good idea. Just go to a website, see what the items are that you might be interested in, and then focus on just holding on to those crafting materials and selling everything else. Otherwise, you're going to fill up a bunch of your inventory, because crafting items don't stack. I really wish they would, because then you'd feel like, oh, this is kind of cool. Or again, I think another mechanic that would have been cool is if you could have had, like, one of the noble places, you could have rented a storehouse. You know, 100, 50 gold pieces or something a day would go to the storehouse, and then you could have, 50 items or 60 items there, and then you could have like, oh, I'll keep my, or you can maybe do it at a couple different cities. So like the place that had the Taxidermist, you'd keep some crafting items there, and then it'd be like, okay, this is where my crafting stuff is, and you could go there, and then you could spend gold, kind of like how you upgrade your cart. You could upgrade like your warehouse or something like that, and then you could have the things there. And again, that would be fun, because what I think is most enjoyable is going out into the wild, clearing out strongholds, getting into some of those intense battles, because eventually you'll get kind of sick of doing the same contracts over and over again, whereas the battles kind of felt fresh, even though they would be kind of the same variants with loadouts. You have different equipment on guys, and so it just was kind of nice being out in the wild and exploring things, and then maybe getting the famed items until late game, when you can start cheesing it a little bit by doing the supply caravans. So I don't know if there's any mods that would create a warehouse. I don't think there's things that add new situations, but that's definitely what I would recommend. It would be great if they actually made something like this, because that definitely was another huge gripe of mine while I was playing this game. The other thing I'd mention is when you're at the bigger cities, they're going to have the specialists. They're going to have the more supplies. They give you the better items, and then they also have higher tier units that you can then hire. When I spent so much of my time at the small to medium tier, I would not finding great brothers to hire. But if you're at the big cities, you're going to start finding the hedge knights, the assassins, the gladiators, the nomads, the raiders, the nobles, highest tier guys. And then the highest tier guys are most likely to have the best stats. So that could be cool. The other thing I'd recommend is, one thing that's really frustrating is I still to this day, after 130 hours, I have some idea of what good stats are, but different backgrounds are likely to roll different numbers, and I don't think it's totally random. I think probably each background has kind of a set, like from X to Y is where it's likely to roll. So it would be nice if it somehow, I don't know if they have a mod that would show you like, okay, these are your numbers, and you know, at this background you like to do this. There are websites out there that will give you that background stuff, so that would be another thing I'd recommend, is if you have like a dual monitor setup, that you just have that website up. You're hiring, like, okay, I just hired a hunter, or a poacher, what is his likely rolls, and you can look at there and be like, oh, his, you know, range rolls from here to here, his HP is here to here, so you can be like, oh, these are good rolls, or no, these are shit rolls, and then you can just can them right away. And you're not always sitting there, because one of the things I was like is, oh, because I'm so short of money, I want to try to get guys with good rolls, but then I don't want to spend the money on new guys. And the weird thing is you could do like the tryouts or something like that, but it just didn't seem like it told me enough, you know. It's like, it would be nice if the tryout would tell you what the stats were, you know, what their skills are, where their stars are for their special traits, which you know are going to give you better rolls. Because I feel like that's the whole point of a tryout, right? Is so you can see it, not have to pay for the full amount. Because otherwise you're spending a bunch of money hiring guys. Now again, if you have the economics set to beginner, maybe you'll be more flush of cash where you don't care if you just end up wasting a bunch of money. But I just felt like I was always a little bit behind the 8 ball with the money, and I felt like I was missing a whole point of the game, and then by the end game I felt like I was way behind, because I had been brute forcing my way through it. And I got a high suspicion that I think of probably at least half, if not a majority of the players out there are doing that. And that's why this game, while it's got good reviews, there's definitely people out there that are, you know, more casual gamers that are really turned off by this game, because it is pretty brutal. And if you don't understand these mechanics, and you just get lost. And you know, I don't think most classic gamers are going to be going onto websites, you know, spending 5 hours watching videos and guides and then start playing a game. They just want to get into it and start playing. And I think if they kind of had some of this background, it would make it way better for you here. Let's see here, you know, the better guys. The other things is when you go to cities, you can then explore what they are, and they'll tell you what they were. And so one of the things you should try to find out, especially early on, is find places that have what are called kennels. And that's pretty much where you can buy warhounds. And that goes into one of your inventory slots, and you can use it unlimited amount of times until the dog itself gets killed. So you can use them. They'll attack units that are trying to flee battle to help pin them into place, to allow you to chase them down and get a kill. So therefore you'll get the experience, and you'll get the equipment if you haven't damaged them too much. It'll also allow the AI to focus on attacking those guys instead of your characters, to help keep them alive. So getting those war dogs early on are a huge boon for you. And then when you kill the Strongholds, you can end up just crafting some better armor for them, so they're a little more survivable. But that is a huge things for you here. Let's see, the other thing I would recommend, sorry, I'm just kind of looking through a checklist here because I just wanted to give some tips here, is one of the things I didn't realize here. Let me open up a game here for a second. So, one of the things I didn't realize for a long period of time is subscribers very prudently were telling me you should upgrade your cart, get your inventory increased. And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds great. But I was worried about spoilers, because I thought what I had done is you'll see like these ambitions here, and they'll come on every couple of days. If you select one that's bad, you can right click it to cancel it. But I had done one where it was like, I can't remember what it was, like make one of your guys a sergeant or get a rally or something like that, and then I was gifted a banner. So if you see that one, you definitely want to do it, especially if you have somebody that you can just get that skill right away, because I used that banner all the way through the game. And I was a little surprised that I never got a better battle standard, but I guess it's already quite powerful, so maybe you just don't need another one. But I was under the impression, because there was things like other ambitions, so I was under the impression that maybe there was an ambition that would give me a better cart. So I was like, oh, I don't want them to tell me which one it is, because it might be some sort of quest and I don't want to feel like I'm cheating. But what happens is you have bunch of stuff up here, right? And I just never really paid much attention to it. This is just your roster, but you know, that's another way to get into it, but you see it frequently here, so I really was rarely doing that. You could do this to get to the camera, get these things. So I'm just like, okay, I'll never really use these things. There's the camp here, but I'd never kept going down this whole pathway here, so I didn't quite understand. So this retinue thing here, this is huge. This is a very important thing. So if you come here, you can upgrade your cart at any time. Once you have the funds, I think you upgrade it like a total of 3 times, and each time it increases your supplies. So that's definitely something you should prioritize, because more inventory space means you can get more items, you can go do objectives longer, and then you can sell and make money. And like, again, money is the way that makes this whole game go around and be a good experience. If you're short cash, you're gonna have bad times. And then the other thing is here, you can see I got all these different retinue members. So higher your fame goes up here, or your renown, I guess I should say, it'll start unlocking more of these guys, and some of them are freaking huge. Like the cook, she was the most important one that by far that I had on this whole campaign. It's really annoying that some of them you have to hire them, you have to have completed the objective at the time of hire, and other ones it seems to like save what they were. So let's say if I click here, you can see like, oh, it's recorded that I've done all these things, and you can hire different people here. But then there's other ones like the agent. So I did an ambition where I had to be allied with one of these things, and she was never unlocked. So it's like, okay, so do I have to have her going and have this going at the time of hire? And then, because it would have been nice to be able to see what are all the available contracts and situations no matter where I work, because then I could definitely be bouncing around, because instead of, especially when I was trying to find those contracts where it would be the deliveries to get to X locations to get better famed gear, that would have saved me a ton of time. But for whatever reason, it wasn't unlocked when I was had allied relations with the noble. So because later on, by the time I saw that she was there and I had an opening, I was no longer allied, because the other thing that's kind of weird about this game is over time, if you do contracts, it'll make the different cities be more favorable with you. So maybe I should show that. So you can see this here. So, I was doing random missions, and because I was bouncing around to different areas, they're not very high, because I wanted to try to just do those deliveries to get the famed items here. So you'll get it up, and it'll be friendly, and then allied, and then the more higher it is, the better prices you'll get for the items you sell, and they'll pay you more for your contracts. But over time, it always goes back towards neutral. The same thing as if you end up attacking a house and raiding their resources, you'll become hostile, and then you can't go to their cities, and over time it'll go back to neutral. But it's kind of frustrating, because you'd like to go through here and make everybody happy, but again, over time it goes back to this neutral. But that's how you would check to see how your standing is with these different locations. Now, I don't know if I just was missing something for most of the game, but I just found like my reputation was neutral during most of the game here, which surprised me, because I felt like I was showing a lot of mercy to guys, so I would have thought my reputation would be beneficial, but really it just seemed neutral for most of the game. But that's something to keep into consideration there. But then going back to this, the cook, I was just struggling with food, and you don't want things to go to waste, because then you're just wasting money. Some places don't sell a lot of food, but once I got the cook, she makes all provisions last an additional 3 days. So that meant I had 3 days where I could be out, going in the wild, clearing out strongholds, moving place to place, and then it also increased the healing rate of my characters by 33%, which is huge, because then my light injuries and things and HP losses were rapidly getting there, because that means I could do additional battles, especially early on when your guys are getting hurt, because you don't have real strong guys. The scout, he ends up making my company travel 15% faster. It also prevents sickness and accidents, which are some random things that can end up happening to you. So that just made the game a little bit faster, so that was fun. This guy was cool early on because you go around and then you could get additional crowns for every place that you find, but over time, you know, that's probably not worth a ton of money, so I would exchange this guy out for somebody better. I really did like the surgeon. You know, every man without a permanent injury is guaranteed to survive an otherwise fatal blow, which means that they get a permanent injury, and then it also makes the injuries take one less day to heal. So again, it's more about getting your guys once they're injured. You can put them in the reserve and get them back out again. And then I did do the bounty hunter. This seemed to be huge. Now I don't know if it's just the farther I went along, it increased the higher chance of having leaders and enemy champions, but by the end of the game it seemed like every battle I was getting into there would be at least one, and sometimes there'd be 2, 3, 4, which helped me do that. And then it pays a contract for everybody, so this guy definitely was worth the money. This guy kind of, once I got over the whole map, really I should have just replaced him with somebody else. You know, the negotiator would help you with your contracts potentially. The lookout would increase your sight radius, so that could be good. Really, the quartermaster could have been good, you know, having the extra supplies, but really there's better ones. This guy probably would have been better when I was trying to find better brothers. That probably would have been huge for me to have more guys, but again, for most of the game I was really short on funds, so I could never really take advantage of that. The paymaster would be huge for me now, because now that I have a bunch of guys on there, that would help me with the funds. And then what happens is you start to get into these issues where you're trying to save up money, and then you start getting into these situations where people are like, I want more money, I want more money, I want more money. And so my daily wages are quite high because I kept having to, because again I was trying to save up money. So that would have bypassed that whole situation had I looked into that. There's also this drill sergeant here. So if I retired somebody, then it increases the experience gain, and that would help me get guys quicker. And then the other issue is I'd like to have some guys in reserve to do some of these battles, and then by having them here, this all of a sudden makes it so they're not getting unhappy being in the back. So this guy would have been huge. So I definitely should have got rid of the other guy and put this guy in my retinue, or this one, had I had this upgraded. But these guys have huge bonuses. Now you do have to spend quite a bit of money on them to get them, but definitely get these, because these are just like permanent buffs to your guys and your characters into your game. And you know, once you get this upgraded, it's just game changing effectively. It's probably one of the single biggest boosts that you can do to your game to help you through. Now the thing that's quite frustrating as well with this game is going back to talking about the ambitions. I apologize, I'm kind of jumping all around here, but once you've met the criteria for an ambition, the game realizes you've met it, and it just takes that off the ambition list. I wish that wasn't the case, because again, one of the things that's real frustrating is you're kind of grinding through getting your renown higher, because you're not even offered higher tier equipments, and the nobles won't even give you contracts until your renown is high, and you do that by doing missions. And you also get it up by completing ambitions, and by the game artificially checking these off, it slows your renown. Now again, it probably just doesn't want you to get it, but it'd be nice, like, oh okay, so you get this one, oh you've already done it, well get it checked off, and then in a couple days we'll just get you the next one, and it would just help you get to renown faster to kind of help farm that. Because again, I hate grinding. I also hate knowing that it's like, oh, one of the objectives is the ambition is to have your card upgraded. Well, you've already done that, so now you can't do that one. Or if you do other things, then it's just taken off. Whereas if you would have had that, and ambitions are random, right? You get 4 or 3 options every time it comes up. So you know, if you got bad rolls where you're doing ones where it's like clear 4 undead strongholds, well, you don't know where the undead strongholds are. It could take you 40-50 days to do that. And if you would have had one that's like put armor attachments onto your armor, then you could have completed that one. But if you didn't know that was an ambition, you're just randomly playing around with things, well, maybe you just lost out on that opportunity. Because it's definitely nice to be able to go around and get those done quickly. So once you visited a town, it'll tell you what each town has. So the temples allow you to heal up fast, get rid of your serious wounds. Now permanent injuries, it doesn't get rid of them. The armor, like I said, the Alchemist, which are very powerful. So if you end up going here and clicked on the armor, then you can just kind of see the equipment and things here. Generally you don't want to buy. See, here's a famed mace. All right, we'll just buy that since I'm here. So it was 8,000, whatever. But these alchemists are very powerful because you can actually buy some of these potions. Now these ones aren't a big deal. Big thing here is, I know I'm jumping around, but these are, I thought this would allow you to get rid of your injuries. It's affect non-permanent injuries, so it's only temporary ones. So don't sit there and be like, oh, I can, because I was stockpiling some of these for the end battle, thinking, oh, now I can get rid of those permanent injuries and not have it affect. It's non-permanent injuries. But they also sell like these second wind potions, which are huge if you're going to do some of the end game stuff, because all of a sudden you get 4 fatigue recovery per turn, or you can get these Lionheart potions that give you plus 20 resolve, which is huge for your bannermen. So there's, if you're getting new guys, you get these potions of knowledge, which gives you plus 100% experience gain, because again, I hate grinding. So all these things that you can do will help you get better, and then be able to hire some of these better guys, because again, it's like, oh, you're getting all these low tier guys, but then you start getting to some of these higher ones like the assassins. Now it's 4,000. The other thing is when you're hiring guys, oh sure, now I finally found a historian. I did all these days and I never had a historian. Alright, well, I guess I'm going to hire him, because I couldn't actually do the black book because I never found a historian. It took me 380 days to finally find a historian. That's crazy. Alright. So you can see these things here, and it shows you kind of the backgrounds here. The marketplace is where you end up buying all these supplies. Like you can see, it has tons of stuff. It also had a ton of supplies, but I just came down here and I'm repairing all the stuff, so I had already purchased them all. So that's why it's empty, but I think there was like 6 or 7 supplies here. And then if you get better relations, you can start picking up spices and these things and then trading them between different regions. That's another way that you can end up getting a bunch of money. Now, for whatever reason, I think it's because the southern people just don't like me. I didn't really get good prices on these things, but certainly in the towns up north, you find lumber and ore, and I don't know what else is there, like fabrics and linens, and you'll kill guys out in the wild, like you can see here, and then you can sell these things for profit. So that's another way that you can make money. The other thing is, if you're starting close to the south, you can go down to the arena, and effectively what that is you throw 3 or 4 guys into battle against some challenge, and then you get some money and experience. So that's a real quick way for you to do an additional objective and get some increased renown and things like that to help farm. So I typically think early on, kind of going between, if you're doing strongholds, especially if you're kind of getting ready to doing the medium tier stuff to start clearing areas out, the south is a much easier way to get additional resources, because each one of these are major cities, and so as you can see, they have multiple areas here. So again, the taxidermist is, you get crafting items, you take them to the taxidermist, and then you can make special items. They're the only way that I'm aware of that you can get quivers that have increased ammo supply, because normally a quiver of arrows or a quiver of bolts has 10 ammo, and literally you can shoot 14, and then your archer can't shoot anymore unless you have a second one, and you can increase their shots by putting it in here, and then you could do another one for another 14, but it's rare that you're going to shoot 28 shots without a battle coming. So generally you want to have your archer just have some sort of melee weapon to help keep them alive here. But that's what I'd recommend. And so you can end up crafting, like here's the unhold fur, which will give you some durability. You can get the bone plates, which are what are on here, and that allows you to ignore the first completely absorbs the first HP damage. I got these reinforced nets, which you can then throw on guys to really lock down, especially like necrosavants later on when you want to get the kills. Otherwise, they'll be warping all around you. Or if there's heroes, like the goblin heroes like to retreat, so you can throw the net on them. But again, I saved up all these mushrooms here. Really, I used a couple of them throughout the game, so ideally I should have just cleared those out. You do have the option to get bandages and antidotes. So the bandages heal bleeding, whereas the antidotes heal poison. So that can be huge for you, especially early on when your guys don't have much. So I usually try to have a couple of those and you just keep them in the inventory. Now the big thing is when you're using these is both the character that's doing the healing and the character that's being healed can't be in the zone of control or in combat with another unit, otherwise you can't heal them. So just be aware that you got to get them out of there. And then you can get these attachments, which you just click and drag over to the armor. These are the hounds I was talking about. Like I said, it costs $4.50, but you just have this dog that you can keep summoning over and over again. So that can be definitely huge for you. But the potions are definitely something that if you're going to be in the south and you got some extra money, definitely stock up on some of these things, because especially on the end game or if you're about to do a real challenging mission, having those to help you get your way through it can be huge. The other thing I'd recommend is when you're fighting barbarians is they can give you these heavy throwing axes, the heavy throwing javelins. If you have guys that have 40, 50 and they're kind of low to medium tier, if you give them throwing axes and these heavy throwing weapons, that's huge. They can do a ton of damage, and if I were to play again, that's definitely what I would do with characters, especially if I was getting more money and I was bringing more and more guys on, is I would just effectively give them those, and then I give them the throwing weapon mastery, which increases the damage by 30%, and you can give them quick hands so they can swap between the area different items without costing action points, and you can do a ton, because there's several times where the guys would be right in my face. I couldn't get to attack them, but if I would have had some throwing weapons, I could have switched on there, and then when they're lining up on you, you can throw in there. They do a ton of damage against armor, and what the AI will frequently do is they'll be carrying a bunch of throwing weapons, but theirs will be lower tier. They rarely will have the heavy weapons, and so they'll just sit there and then make you jump into them. Whereas if you have them, you can start throwing, and if they close the distance, then you can switch on to a different weapon for free. So that was a huge component of the game that I really didn't take advantage of, which is unfortunate, because that would have definitely made that middle game much, much easier for me. But these are the famed weapons. They just kind of have this highlighted areas. They're typically stronger versions. They cost less fatigue. They usually will give you some sort of reduced cost when you're using your weapon skills. So all that can be huge. And the big thing with the weapon skills is it's not just aim shot. It's also your quick shot, which is considered a skill, but that's your basic attack. So all those things are huge with these weapons that give you the minus skills. So just keep that in mind. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about here is the training hall. Now, I know that's kind of controversial. Some people don't think it's a good use of funds. Again, I hate grinding, so I was very pleased to put guys in the training hall. So you go there, if they're not max leveled, you can decide how many battles, I think it's 1, 3, or 5, and they give different bonus XP percentages. And when you get to be this later game, when you're fighting 30, 40 units, each guy is getting quite a bit of experience. And then you can put both the training hall bonus and the potion experience stacks. So then all of a sudden you're doing 130, 140 bonus XP. Percent XP, I should say, for battles, and you can rapidly level up your units to get them to be better for you, especially if you're going through them a lot. So keep your eye out for training halls. Again, early on you're not going to be able to take advantage of them because it's too expensive, but once you get to the middle game, late game, where you're starting to get some more funds and you also really want to rapidly get better guys, I would strongly recommend doing that. The other thing is there's taverns. So they kind of have two different roles. The first role is you can ask them for rumors, and they'll help you know where strongholds are. They'll say, hey, I've heard that there's maybe this so-and-so's crypt is to the north somewhere. And then you're like, okay, so north of here is a crypt, and it sounds like if it's so-and-so's grave, then they probably have a famed weapon, and that'll help you get there. And I think you can only do 3 of them before it says, hey, we have no other information for you. The other option is you can go there and drink, and if you pay for a round of booze, then it'll randomly increase the happiness of the people who are drinking there, and then if they drink too much, they get to be intoxicated, which gives them buffs for 24 hours or overnight. I forget what it is, but that's the thing with the taverns. And I'm trying to think here, the harbors, how those work is you can get on a boat, you pay for a boat, and you can say, oh, I want to go over to here, and then it'll like warp you over there really quick to travel over there, which can be really fast, or over here. Barber is just a cosmetic thing, so I never used it, but if you wanted to change the look of your characters, you could take them to the barber. The Fletcher is where you can get the good bows, but again, I never found them to sell good bows for them. I mean, they'll sell good bows, but they won't sell fame bows or crossbows unless you have delivery. At least that's how it worked on my campaign here. And they never sold those increased quiver or bolt sizes. You have to craft for those. But like Windfall here, that kennel, that's where some of the guys are. And each time you do one, you'll get a different map spawn, so they'll be in different locations here. But like here's one that had all these things over here, and then the other kennel was like up here. So just kind of keep that in mind. The other thing is when you're trying to get money early on, like coming over here where you can just go between these 3 cities here real quick, because they're decent size, you can make good money, and then you can do a bunch of stuff. So I was spending a lot of time kind of over here, which was okay, but the big cities you can't do the noble contracts for a while, so maybe you have to kind of do the small to medium. But if you're bouncing, so what I ended up doing late game is I was just kind of bouncing between these areas here, because I was getting good decent contracts with the nobles, and then able to just stock up on a bunch of money here. But as you can see, the maps are really quite large, and you can go around. Now, these are called Strongholds, so there'll be battles at these locations. What I did is I didn't realize that they would keep respawning on the map, so you do want to clear them out once you get a strong enough Battle Brothers, because then you'll get experience and you may get famed items there, especially when they become higher tier guys. But don't save them like what I did for most of the game, because then you're missing out on free experience, decent loot, and if you have a bunch of stuff that you can fill up your inventories and sell. What you may want to do is usually they'll give you a quest, and if there's no strongholds nearby, then they may send you, like if I came here, it's like, hey, clear out the stronghold, but there's nothing over here, then the stronghold I'll be clearing out would be like all the way over here, so that's a couple days. Whereas if I had one that's, you know, real close, like here or here, then they'll be like, oh, that's where they're going to say the guy is. Now, be careful when you're doing those contracts, though, because if it's like a 1 skull and there's a 3 skull guy here, and you don't really know if it's a 1 or a 3 skull, but typically when you're later in the game, it's going to be, you know, a 3 skull guy. But if you take a 1 skull objective here and it sends you to here, it'll put it a 1 skull guy in this location and delete the 3 skull guy, and you're like, what's the difference? Well, you have to have an elite tier guy at the stronghold to be able to have a chance to unlock famed weapons, because if it's a low tier battle, you're not going to find any there. So do be careful if you're doing that. The other thing I would recommend is be very cautious when you're stockpiling items, especially if you're going to try to do the Kraken, because what it effectively does is just add the amount of Ungol hides and Shimmering Ashes, I think is what it's called, to what you have. So I had like 8 Ungol hides. I went there, it's like, nope, you need 11. So then I had to just run around the map until I found Unghols, and that took out 8 of my inventory slots. And then the same thing happened with Shimmering Ashes, but the problem was with those, because I had cleared out the strongholds, I couldn't find a freaking Necrosavants on the map. It took me like 60, 70, maybe even 80 days to find another encampment of Necrosavants, and I actually had to do like 2 or 3 battles against them before they dropped enough ashes for me. So if you see Necrosavants, you can clear them out, but man, be careful that you don't clear them all out, because I did not. While most of these guys will abandon a stronghold after time, once I saw a Necrosavant, I never saw them abandon one. Well, that's not true. There was one over here that I did, but for the most part, I did not see them leave, and they're strong enough that another army coming and killing them and taking over the camp just isn't likely to happen. So that way you at least know where they are, so you don't have to sit there and grind and run around the map like I did to find those items, because that was one of the few endgame locations where you had to have some items to be able to actually complete the requirements before you could do the endgame battle, which really frustrated the shit out of me because of how long it was taking me to do that. The only other thing I'd mention is if you find a place that you really know you're not going to be going to, like if they were just all by themselves way over here, let's say, and I knew I wasn't going to go to their towns, then you can raid their caravans, kill their adventure groups, things like that, and it doesn't matter if they're hostile because you're not likely to be there. But make sure you wouldn't do that. Like if you wanted to keep going here or here and you kill these guys, then because that's what happened to me, is then I didn't have the kennel, I didn't have all these nice areas here, and then they would send their armies out to attack me. So it definitely bit me in the ass, but it's raiding those things is an easy way to get some pretty good equipment, which means you'll get good money for it. But you don't want to do it because if you it'll turn them hostile, and then you can't go to their cities, and it takes a long time before they'll be friendly with you again, and give you, because when they're hostile, not only do they attack you, you can't go to the city, but you don't get those contracts anymore. So just be very cautious, and if you're going to do a raiding technique, then do it at a location that you don't care about, and you're not going to lose access to some very important things, because that definitely hamstrung me for quite a while, until the noble house's endgame situation was squared away, and then it finally was able to allow me to take advantage and start to go to those cities again. So I think I'm going to call it quits here for the day. I think on the next tips section, I'll kind of talk a little bit more specific about what I'd recommend for just kind of like some character builds and that kind of situation with the abilities, how that kind of works, because that definitely is where I made a lot of other mistakes and it really made it painful for me. And then I'll just give a couple of tips on, you know, some of the end game challenges that I found. Because I definitely brute forced my way through it, and had I known what those mechanics were for those battles, now you'll pretty much know what I'm going to say for that part of the tip section if you watched me do the battles. But you know, there may be people that don't want to go through all those videos and just kind of want to see the tip section for somebody that just ran a newer player like myself who just beat this game and on expert difficulty and went through it, because I'm not trying to find, you know, information for people who want to min-max their way through this. I'm just kind of looking for a casual player, because there's definitely subscribers that are on this channel that they've told me they've have hundreds, if not 1,000 hours in this game, and they're definitely more of an expert in this game than I am. And you know, they may be able to do much better guides than what I have, but I'm just trying to give high yield information for somebody who has not played this game if they're trying to maximize their enjoyment. So thanks for watching. If you're enjoying these videos, please give my channel a like and subscribe. Encourage me to post more content for you. Have a great day.